My brothers and sisters, many of us work so hard to make our homes comfortable and beautiful, but we often overlook the unseen world. There are certain things we may keep in our homes, sometimes unknowingly, that can attract the presence of evil forces and disturb the peace of our family. Islam teaches us to protect our homes physically and spiritually, and today we will discuss some common items that may be causing harm without us realizing it. Once you know them, you can take steps to remove them and restore tranquility in your household, inshallah. Islam, the presence of idols, statues, or images of living beings within the home is something that should be avoided, as it can have both spiritual and psychological effects on the people living there. The Prophet Muhammad warned that angels of mercy do not enter a house where there are images of living beings, and this absence of blessings can leave a home vulnerable to negative forces. The concept here is not merely about decoration, but about what such items represent. Idols and statues have been associated throughout history with false worship, shirk, and pagan practices, and keeping them in one's home, even for the sake of art or beauty, can unknowingly open a spiritual door that invites harm. Many people keep these items without realizing their origins or symbolic meanings. A decorative statue bought from a shop might have once been an object of worship in a different culture, carrying with it a history of spiritual association that is contrary to Islamic belief. Similarly, framed pictures or sculptures of humans and animals, particularly when displayed prominently, are discouraged because they may fall into the category of taswir, depicting living beings, which the Prophet specifically prohibited in certain forms. This prohibition is rooted in the aim to protect Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, and prevent any pathway that might lead to shirk, no matter how indirect it may seem. In today's time, these items may not be worshipped in the literal sense, but the wisdom behind removing them still stands, as they can become a source of pride, imitation of non-Islamic traditions, or even fascination with beliefs and practices that are harmful to faith. Moreover, shayateen are drawn to environments where disobedience to Allah is present, and the keeping of such items could be one of the subtle ways they find an entry point. By removing idols, statues, and certain images from the home, a believer not only safeguards their own faith, but also ensures that the home remains a place where angels of mercy reside. This aligns with the greater Islamic principle of purifying one's surroundings, both physically and spiritually, to maintain a clean and blessed space where acts of worship are performed with sincerity and focus. Even when it comes to children's toys or cultural artifacts, caution is advised, as normalizing the presence of such objects in the home can dull our sensitivity to the dangers they represent. A Muslim household should reflect submission to Allah alone, and every object within it should contribute to that purpose. By consciously avoiding and removing these items, a person takes an active step toward protecting their home from unseen harm, reinforcing the values of Tawheed, and ensuring that nothing within their four walls displeases Allah or compromises the spiritual protection that comes from his remembrance. Possession of occult, magic, or witchcraft-related items is one of the most dangerous things that can exist in a Muslim home, as it directly connects to practices condemned in the Quran and Sunnah. Magic in all its forms is considered a major sin in Islam, and it is something that distances a person from Allah while drawing them closer to the influence of shayateen. The Quran mentions how magic was taught by devils in the time of Prophet Suleiman, Arabic-kin, Arabic lam, Arabic hit, Arabic alif, Arabic alif, Arabic lam, Arabic alif, Arabic meme, and that it leads people into disbelief when they engage in it or use it to harm others. Unfortunately, many people today may possess items linked to these practices without fully understanding their nature. These could be talismans, amulets, strange symbols, writings in unknown languages, or even certain jewelry pieces said to bring a look or a protection. Some may keep books or guides on astrology, spellcasting, or fortune-telling, assuming they are harmless or merely cultural, but in reality, these are doorways to the unseen world of jinn and demonic influence. Objects connected to Sihar, black magic, often carry with them the spiritual presence of the entities they are meant to invoke, and having them in one's home can invite their activity, causing disturbances, nightmares, illnesses, and family conflicts without an apparent cause. Even decorative items that contain occult symbols, like pentagrams or third eye motifs or zodiac charts, can serve as tools of shayateen if they are rooted in beliefs opposing Islamic teachings. Some people also fall into this trap through souvenirs brought from other countries, not realizing they carry spiritual baggage from rituals or pagan tradition. In Islam, seeking protection, guidance, or influence through anything other than Allah is a form of shirk, and owning such items can be a silent yet dangerous participation in that sin. The jinn are known to be drawn to such objects because they are tied to contracts, spells, or acts of worship directed toward them instead of Allah, and keeping them creates a spiritual link that is difficult to break unless the item is destroyed and sincere repentance is made. Furthermore, belief in such items often leads to dependency on them, weakening one's trust in Allah and replacing tawakkul with superstition. When a Muslim cleanses their home from anything related to magic, fortune-telling, or occultism, they are in fact breaking hidden chains that may be binding them spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. Such cleansing is not only about removing the object itself, but also about cutting off the influence it represents, ensuring that one's home is a place of dhikr, Quran recitation, and the presence of angels rather than a haven for shayateen. Displaying symbols associated with shirk or false beliefs is a matter of serious concern in Islam, as such symbols often carry meanings and histories that contradict the pure message of Tawheed. These symbols may seem harmless to the untrained eye, appearing as fashionable jewelry, artwork, or decorative patterns, but in reality, they can represent ideologies, religions, or spiritual systems that reject the worship of Allah alone. Shirk, being the greatest sin in Islam, is not limited to the act of worshipping idols. It also includes any form of association with beliefs or practices that attribute divine powers to others besides Allah. Many of these symbols have roots in ancient pagan religions, mysticism, or man-made spiritual systems that were used to glorify false deities, channel supernatural forces, or promote philosophies opposed to Islamic teachings. Common examples include the evil eye symbol worn as protection, the yin-yang used to promote a belief in duality of divine forces, or the akrosa associated with Christian worship. Even though a Muslim might keep these items without intending to worship through them, their presence in the home normalizes their meaning and may subtly influence the beliefs of family members, especially children. Shayateen are known to be attracted to environments where their symbols are displayed, as it reflects an acceptance, whether conscious or unconscious, of their ideologies. These symbols can also serve as spiritual markers, signaling that the home is a place where the remembrance of Allah is not dominant, making it more susceptible to their influence. Furthermore, keeping such items can cause a person to unknowingly imitate the religious practices or customs of other faiths, which the Prophet Muhammad warned against. In some cases, these symbols are embedded in clothing designs, carpets, wall art, or jewelry, and people may purchase them purely for their aesthetic appeal, unaware of the deeper meaning behind them. The danger lies in the fact that symbols are powerful conveyors of ideas, and over time they can shape thoughts, attitudes, and even behaviors in subtle ways. In Islamic history, the companions of the Prophet were extremely careful to remove any trace of symbols or objects linked to shirk, understanding that the preservation of Tawheed requires vigilance not only in belief but also in environment. For a Muslim household to be spiritually secure, it must be free from items that contradict the worship of Allah alone, whether they are kept out of ignorance, sentimentality, or fashion. By removing these symbols, one is taking an active stand against all forms of shirk and aligning the household with the command of Allah to avoid falsehood in every form. It is also an act of education, as it teaches the family the importance of recognizing and rejecting anything that compromises the purity of Islamic belief, ensuring that the home reflects a clear devotion to Allah without confusion or contradiction. Storing books or media promoting immoral or sinful behavior can have a deep and lasting effect on the spiritual health of a household. In Islam, the environment plays a major role in shaping a person's heart and mind, and what we expose ourselves to repeatedly becomes part of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Books, magazines, movies, music, and digital content that glorify indecency, violence, gossip, disbelief, or disobedience to Allah are not merely sources of entertainment. They are tools that can plant seeds of corruption in the soul. When such materials are kept in the home, they remain a silent yet constant influence, normalizing the sins and false values they promote. A novel that mocks religious values, a movie that celebrates immorality, a magazine that promotes arrogance and vanity, or music that spreads indecent messages can all become a subtle form of spiritual poison. The Quran repeatedly warns about following the footsteps of Shaitan, and one of those footsteps is being desensitized to sin through repeated exposure. The danger is even greater in the modern age, where such content is often packaged in attractive and entertaining forms, making it seem harmless or even inspiring when, in reality, it undermines the principles of modesty, humility, and God consciousness. This influence can be especially damaging for children and teenagers whose hearts and minds are still developing, as they may begin to see sinful behavior as normal or admirable. Even for adults, constant exposure to corrupt ideas can weaken the heart's resistance to temptation and make acts of disobedience seem less serious over time. Furthermore, these materials often distract from beneficial knowledge and worship, consuming valuable time that could be used for Quran recitation, learning about the Deen, or engaging in productive and halal activities. A home that stores such items can also become a place where angels of mercy are absent, as the environment is tainted by messages that go against Allah's commands. In many cases, people keep these books or media because they are expensive, part of a collection or associated with memories, but the truth is that the harm they bring outweighs any sentimental or financial value. Islam encourages believers to surround themselves with reminders of Allah, beneficial knowledge, and positive influences that bring them closer to Jannah, and this principle applies to the media we consume and store. Removing materials that promote sin is not just about avoiding harm. It is about actively creating an environment where faith can grow, hearts can find peace, and family members are encouraged to live in a way that pleases Allah. By consciously replacing harmful media with beneficial alternatives, a household can become a source of light and guidance rather than a space that invites spiritual darkness. Playing music or entertainment that glorifies haram actions is a serious issue that many people take lightly. Yet it has a deep effect on the heart, the mind, and the spiritual state of the entire household. In Islam, what we listen to and what we watch is not just a matter of personal taste. It is a matter of what we allow to enter our hearts through our senses. The tongue and the ears are gateways to the soul, and whatever passes through them influences our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When music or other forms of entertainment promote disobedience to Allah, normalize sin, or glorify lifestyles built on immorality, it becomes a tool of Shaitan to distract believers from remembrance of Allah and to entice them towards what He has forbidden. The Quran mentions that among the tactics of Shaitan is to mislead people through idle talk, and scholars have explained that this can include songs and entertainment that encourage sinful behavior or distract from worship. Many modern songs and shows openly promote themes of fornication, drinking alcohol, drugs, arrogance, rebellion against parents, and mockery of religion, often wrapping these messages in catchy tunes, engaging rhythms, or captivating storylines that make them more appealing and memorable. The danger lies in the fact that repeated exposure to these messages slowly reshapes one's perception of right and wrong. What is initially shocking or clearly haram can begin to seem normal, acceptable, or even desirable after hearing or watching it many times. This effect is not limited to music with explicit lyrics. Even instrumental or so-called innocent entertainment can become problematic if it promotes a lifestyle that contradicts Islamic values or wastes excessive amounts of time that could be spent on beneficial activities. Shows and films that glorify relationships outside of marriage, materialism, greed, or revenge may not use foul language, but they still carry messages that conflict with the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad warned that there will come a time when people will take haram things lightly, including musical instruments, and we see today that this warning has become a reality in many Muslim homes. The constant presence of such entertainment in a house creates an atmosphere where the remembrance of Allah is drowned out by the sounds of sin and heedlessness. Angels of mercy are driven away, or shayateen are attracted to places where Allah's commands are ignored and His boundaries are crossed. For children and teenagers, the impact can be even more severe as their personalities, morals, and sense of identity are still being formed. If the background soundtrack of their daily life is filled with music and entertainment that glorifies haram, they may grow up adopting those values without realizing it. They may memorize songs that celebrate indecency while struggling to memorize even short surahs of the Quran. Or they may become emotionally attached to fictional characters who live in direct opposition to Islamic teachings. This subtle conditioning can weaken their connection to their faith and make it harder for them to recognize and resist temptation when they encounter it in real life. The same applies to adults who may think they are immune to such influence, but over time, their hearts can also become desensitized. Their focus in prayer can be affected, and their priorities can shift away from what truly matters. Another danger of such entertainment is that it can become an addiction, consuming hours of a person's day and leaving little time for worship, family bonding, or self-improvement. Music and media are often designed to be addictive, using psychological triggers that make people want to keep listening or watching for longer periods. This constant stimulation leaves the heart restless, unable to find peace in silence, Quran recitation, or quiet reflection. The more the heart becomes accustomed to finding pleasure in these haram forms of entertainment, the less it will find sweetness in acts of worship. Over time, the heart can harden, making repentance and a return to Allah more difficult. Some people justify keeping such entertainment in their homes by saying they do not pay attention to the lyrics, or that they only watch it for fun. But the reality is that everything we consume affects us on some level. Even if the mind is not consciously analyzing the words or the plot, the subconscious absorbs them, and they leave impressions on the heart. Islam teaches that a believer should be mindful of every influence they allow into their life, guarding their senses from what displeases Allah. Removing or reducing music and entertainment that glorifies haram actions is not about depriving oneself of enjoyment. It is about replacing harmful influences with those that nourish the soul and strengthen faith. There are many halal alternatives that can bring joy and relaxation without compromising Islamic values, such as nasheeds without instruments, beneficial lectures, educational programs, and wholesome storytelling that inspires goodness. When a household chooses to cut off sources of haram entertainment, it is taking a stand against the cultural trends that normalize sin and distract from the remembrance of Allah. This change can transform the spiritual atmosphere of the home, making it a place where the Quran is recited, dua is made, and conversations are filled with beneficial reminders rather than harmful lyrics or storylines. The blessings that come from such an environment are not only felt in the peace of the heart, but also in the protection of the home from shayateen. It also sets a powerful example for children, showing them that entertainment does not have to come at the cost of one's deen, and that guarding the heart is a priority for a Muslim. Over time, this shift can lead to greater unity within the family, a stronger connection to Allah, and a deeper sense of purpose in life. By being selective about what sounds and messages fill the walls of the home, a believer is actively shaping an environment that supports their journey to Jannah rather than pulling them towards heedlessness and sin. Neglecting Quran recitation and remembrance in the home is one of the most common, but also one of the most damaging oversights a Muslim family can make, as it leaves the house spiritually unprotected and deprived of the blessings that come with the constant mention of Allah. The Quran is not just a book of guidance to be read occasionally. It is the living word of Allah, a source of light, healing, and protection from harm. When the Quran is recited in a home, it fills the atmosphere with tranquility, drives away shayateen, and invites the angels of mercy to enter. Conversely, when the Quran is absent from a home, it becomes more susceptible to the influence of negative forces, arguments, restlessness, and a general lack of barakah in daily life. Neglecting the remembrance of Allah, whether through dhikr, dua, or salat, allows spiritual emptiness to grow, which shayateen exploit to plant seeds of disobedience, despair, and heedlessness. The home is meant to be a sanctuary where a Muslim finds peace, resets their heart, and connects with Allah away from the chaos of the outside world. But without regular recitation of the Quran, that sanctuary loses its protective shield. The Prophet Muhammad taught that shayateen flee from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited. A powerful reminder that the words of Allah are not just guidance for the mind, but also a fortress for the soul. Many families fall into the habit of thinking that listening to the Quran occasionally or playing it in the background is enough. But the real power comes when the members of the household engage with it actively, reading it aloud, understanding its meanings, and applying it in daily life. This effort not only protects the home, but also strengthens the faith of everyone living in it. Neglecting dhikr is equally harmful, as remembrance of Allah keeps the heart alive and aware of His constant presence. Without it, the heart becomes distracted by worldly matters, anxieties, and temptations. Regular dhikr, such as saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha, and making istighfar, creates an environment in which shayateen cannot comfortably stay. On the other hand, a silent home, devoid of Quran and dhikr, becomes a place where shayateen can settle, influencing the thoughts, moods, and interactions of its residents. This often manifests in unnecessary arguments, lack of motivation for worship, feelings of heaviness in the heart, or a sense of emptiness despite having material comfort. The neglect of Quran recitation in the home also has a generational impact. Children who grow up in an environment where the Quran is rarely read may see it as something distant, reserved only for Ramadan or special occasions. They may memorize a few short surahs for prayer, but without seeing the Quran as a daily companion, they miss the opportunity to form a personal bond with it. This weakens their spiritual foundation, making them more vulnerable to doubts, peer pressure, and unhealthy influences as they grow older. On the other hand, a child who hears the Quran regularly at home learns from an early age that it is a source of comfort, guidance, and protection. The same applies to dhikr. Children learn by observing their parents, and if they see their elders remembering Allah in daily life, it becomes second nature for them as well. In many homes, the neglect comes not from deliberate avoidance, but from being too busy, tired, or distracted by worldly matters. Work, school, chores, and entertainment often take priority, and days pass without anyone opening the Quran or sitting together for a moment of remembrance. This slow drift away from the Quran weakens the family's spiritual connection, making it harder to return to consistent recitation. It also allows shayateen to slowly fill the vacuum left by the absence of Allah's words. Over time, the household may notice an increase in stress, misunderstandings, lack of contentment, or even unexplained difficulties, all of which can be eased or prevented by restoring the Quran and dhikr to their rightful place in the daily routine. The power of reciting Quran and making dhikr is not limited to personal benefit. It transforms the entire atmosphere of the home. Even a small habit, such as reciting a page of Quran after Fajr or reading Surah Al-Mulk before sleeping, can bring immense barakah. Gathering as a family to listen to or read the Quran strengthens the bond between members as they share in the same source of guidance and peace. Similarly, incorporating dhikr into daily life, while cooking, driving, or doing chores, keeps the heart engaged with Allah no matter how busy the day becomes. This constant remembrance turns ordinary tasks into acts of worship and shields the heart from heedlessness. It is also important to note that the neglect of Quran recitation is not only a loss of spiritual protection, but also a missed opportunity for reward. Every letter recited brings 10 rewards, and the act of reading, listening, and reflecting upon the Quran is an act of worship beloved to Allah. The same applies to dhikr, where the simplest phrases carry immense reward and forgiveness. Yet when these acts are absent from a home, the residents lose out on blessings they could have easily attained with a few minutes of effort each day. Neglecting the Quran and dhikr can also make the heart more susceptible to doubt and confusion when faced with trials. Without the regular reminder of Allah's words, it becomes easier to feel hopeless, question one's purpose, or be swayed by misleading ideologies. The Quran provides clarity, perspective, and reassurance during difficulties, while dhikr softens the heart and keeps it anchored in faith. A home that keeps these practices alive is far more resilient in the face of challenges, as its members are spiritually fortified and united in their trust in Allah. Restoring the Quran and remembrance of Allah to a neglected home begins with intention and small, consistent steps. It may be as simple as setting aside 5 minutes each day to read together, designating certain time to dhikr, or replacing moments of silence or idle talk with the recitation of Allah's word. Over time, these habits can transform the home into a place where faith is nurtured daily, where shayateen find no foothold, and where every member feels the peace that comes from living in constant connection with their Creator.